So you used to travel these roads all the time when you were younger?
All the time.
Did you grow up on a farm or a ranch?
No, I grew up in the middle of downtown Blessing. One main street, we don't even have a red light. Because they have bingo like 2 nights a week.
We're headed to my hometown of Blessing in Matagorda County, Texas. We were contacted by Captain Richard Roof with the Matagorda County Sheriff's Department and an old friend of mine up in Chamblee to help with a 31-year-old unsolved murder case. On June the 6th, 1982, a widow named Charlene Corporon, 48 years old, was found murdered in her house, shot in the head, asleep in her bedroom.
The sheriff's office received a telephone call. He said, something's bad happened to my mama.
We were all just shocked. You know, you just can't imagine what happened, why, and who did it.
She was scared of her son.
He had beaten her up.
She was scared of her boyfriend, and the next thing I knew, she was dead.
At one point, Charlene's son, Gary Corporon, was arrested for the murder, and he was subsequently released, and the case went cold.
Gary Corporon, one of our suspects, he has a cousin named Keith Corporon, and Keith is a guy that I used to date.
Oh.
So it's a small world.
How do you keep bringing me to these places?
Because I'm going to talk you into liking them.
You want to make a bet on that one?
This murder happened in 1982, and I had just gotten back from college for the summer, and I mean, everybody was talking about it.
This case is the oldest case we've looked at. It's 31 years old.
That could present some challenges.
Let's hope that we can find enough witnesses still around, still alive, to get to where we need to be.
Kelly and I studied the case history, but there's still a lot to learn. Because this case is so old, I knew that the DNA evidence was going to be a challenge. So I already sent the evidence off to Sorensen Lab. And unfortunately, all the DNA is too degraded to do anything with. But we've solved cases without DNA before. So our hope is to figure out who committed this crime and acquire enough evidence to convince the DA to take this case.
It has been 16 years and still no answer.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
There are so many cold cases out there just waiting to be solved.
The crime scene ultimately tells the story of the murder.
We want to bring justice to these victims.
Hey!
Hi, guys.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Yolanda, Richard.
Nice to meet you. Yolanda's learning what a small world this is. Everybody knows everybody.
Man, we appreciate you guys coming down to give us a hand with this thing.
We're excited to be here.
Nubbin Chamblee is a guy that my dad grew up with. He worked for the Matagorda County Sheriff's Department back then, and he was involved with the case, even though he didn't make the initial scene. He contacted me about the idea of working on this case again because this case has haunted him for over 30 years.
Hopefully, with y'all's help, we can all put it together and let's get some closure on this thing. Charlene was our neighbor. She's a good woman, a good lady, and a friend. Once you start a case like Charlene's, if you think that you might have some input that could get closure for her and the Corporon family, you want to try to do the best you can for it, and I think we owe her that.
Johnny, this is Nubbin Chamblee.
Hi, Johnny. Heard a lot about you.
Kelly called me in to help on this case, and I realized we basically have no physical evidence to work with. So this is going to be talking to people and trying to figure out who's telling the truth.
Nubbin, since you were here back then, why don't you start from the front of the story?
This happened approximately 31 years ago. 8 o'clock in the morning, the sheriff's office received a call from a Gary Corporon when he said, my mother doesn't look good. I need a deputy out here and get him to come quick. There was apparent gunshot wound to the head. Appeared to be 22 caliber bullets.
Okay. The bullet that killed Charlene was so fragmented that there's no way we can get any ballistics. But the pathologist was able to confirm that the weapon used in this case was consistent with a 22 caliber. So now we need to go back and see who possibly owned a 22 caliber gun.
Are we all agreeing that in this case we only have 2 known suspects? Gary Corporon, the son, and Ben Fry, the boyfriend?
Yes.
With a 31-year-old case, there's always a possibility that your suspects or your witnesses have passed. But the sheriff's office has done a lot of legwork in this case, so we know that both of our lead suspects are still alive and living in the area.
Both of them have keys to the house. There's no forced entry. There doesn't appear to be a burglary. Both of them have motive.
So for Ben Fry, Charlene's boyfriend, what do y'all want to put on the board under his name?
Well, Charlene had wanted to break up with him, and he was trying to convince her not to break up with him.
She owed him money. She owed quite a bit of money.
$27,000
to Ben.
that Charlene had told the girlfriends that he had a temper?
Yes.
He's strange. She wants to dump him. There's all kinds of indications that he may have had a problem.
What should we put on the board for Gary Corporon?
Well, I know in several of the witness statements, he would keep saying that, my daddy told me I'm getting this place, or I've got 3/4 interest in it now.
In 1982, when this murder happened, Charlene was living in her house alone, and her son Gary and his wife Doris lived in a trailer behind her. Gary and Charlene ran the grass farm together.
They were in financial difficulty at the time, too. A lot of debt.
That farm was in an upside-down position.
Money definitely goes in here, right?
Yep. Yep.
Farm, life insurance.
The fact that he's a sole beneficiary in the will, he stands to profit in the event of her death.
I'm going to put stands to gain all. So back in 1982, Gary was arrested.
Yes.
What happened when it was taken to the grand jury?
In this particular case, it was passed.
The deputies were told that the grand jury took no action, so after that, the case went cold. And then Gary was released.
That was not uncommon in those days because if you pass it, well, maybe some more evidence will come in at a later date.
This happens sometimes. Someone can be arrested before the evidence is strong enough, but in this case, maybe there just wasn't strong enough evidence because Gary didn't kill Charlene. We always have to look at the suspects that the original detectives focused on, but this case hasn't been solved in 31 years. Maybe it's someone totally different. It could be a random intruder. Hello, Miss Barbara.
Hello, Miss Kelly.
How you doing, baby?
I'm fine. How are you?
We came to visit Charlene's nephew and his wife. The Corporon family has always had a lot of questions about what happened that day, even though their cousin Gary's a suspect. I grew up with Barbara and Victor. We used to go to the dances together pretty much every Friday night and Saturday night, so we know each other very well. And it's really cool to be able to come home and work on a case with people that I've always known. 1982, you were how old?
I was just out of high school, right?
Okay. So Charlene married into the family?
Yes.
But everybody got along with her?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
A great personality, you know, she was outgoing.
It was a huge funeral. You could tell this lady was
Well-liked.
well-liked.
Tell us about Charlene and Gary.
There was some pretty rough arguments between them.
People had told me, you know, he broke her nose. He twisted her arm so hard and bent it behind her back that he broke her arm. People would tell me, you know, I remember that. I remember him beating her.
There are a lot of rumors in small towns. And in this case, Nubbin reached out to the hospital before we arrived, and the hospital says they do not have those records. Without that type of paperwork evidence, we're going to have a really hard time proving it ever happened in a courtroom.
It's always was hard for us, you know, your family, you don't think that someone, you know, would do that to their mother. It's just hard for us to believe that.
Did you know anything about Charlene and her boyfriend?
Not very much, no. You just can't imagine what happened and who did it, and you know, all those questions start going through your mind, you know, why, what? Everybody was really, really shocked.
It was so public. It was, I mean, everyone in the county knew about it. And then all of a sudden, it's just...
Fades away.
Yes, it just faded away. No, there was no question, no answers, no ending to it. Why was it dropped so quickly?
Just knowing that somebody's trying and looking into it makes us feel like her memory's not forgotten.
We didn't come here to get y'all's hopes up for nothing. We're really trying hard.
I've known Kelly almost all my life, and Kelly's a very smart, very determined girl. When she said she wanted to do this, I was like, aha, we're going to get some answers now.
Tell your sister I said
I
hello.
will. Poor Kelly lost her voice.
Isn't it nice and quiet?
It is so quiet in here. What is up with that? Today, we are going to the house where the murder occurred, and Kelly loses her voice. Just like, are you all right? Yeah, I'll be fine.
It'd be nice if the bedroom's laid out somewhat like it was when this happened, yeah.
I know.
As a CSI investigator, this is imperative for me to be able to see it firsthand. I need to look at the crime scene to get an idea of how the murder was committed. That will hopefully tell me what type of crime this was. Random intruder or crime of passion?
This was Charlene's room.
The bed's basically in the same spot.
Which curtains had blood? These or these?
I think it would be these.
The body would have been laying this position.
This way.
The autopsy report refers to a horizontal superficial graze.
Right.
For that to be true, she would have to be in a sleeping position somewhat like that.
the shooter came down the hallway. So he's shooting in the dark.
Yes.
Right. Intruder comes in, points the gun, shoots, but the shot grazes the victim behind the neck and goes in the pillow. She bounces up, but the bottom of her is still caught up in the sheets. Bam! Intruder shoots her again. She falls down slightly on her left side, comes over, rolls her over. The whole question is she truly dead at that point?
No. You don't think he rolled over and make sure she was dead?
Yes.
Yeah, you're
Because
right.
look at all of this.
Yes,
Okay, look at all of this transfer. So she doesn't just fall back. There's no robbery, no murder weapon. The intruder came into this home, shot Charlene, rolled her over to make sure that she was dead. This is no random intruder. This was personal. Knowing this now, we can narrow down our focus to Gary and to Ben Fry.
This is my old house right here. And the Baptist preacher always lived right here when we were little. So he was always telling us, y'all are sinners, y'all need to get to church.
Was he wrong or right?
That's the alley that Mama chased Daddy down with the butcher knife when he would steal our booze.
We're near my hometown of Matagorda County, Texas. Going down the road, it's cool to see the live oak trees and all the houses. Been down that road a million times. Never thought there'd be a day I was driving down it to work on an old murder case. Most of these people that we're talking to today are people that have never been talked to before.
That's
so
right.
Maybe they have something nobody's ever heard before.
It's kind of like fishing. You don't know what you're going to catch.
We're investigating the 31-year-old murder of Charlene Corporon, who was found shot to death in her bed. We still have two possible suspects, Ben Fry, Charlene's boyfriend, or Gary Corporon, her son.
Hello, George Eunuch. I'm Kelly, Big Billy's daughter. Can we ask you some questions? It's nothing bad. Jay! Stop! Come here.
We're opening up a cold case file for Charlene Corporon's homicide.
Do you know anything about what happened way back then?
Not really.
Do you know whatever happened to Gary?
I hadn't seen him in years.
Walking the streets of Blessing, talking and interviewing all these people.
How you doing, man? You doing okay?
Just like a high school reunion.
Did you smell the whiskey?
I didn't smell it.
God bless you, Lord. Your people.
My people.
Oh, heck.
As far as actually knowing anything, no, I don't on the murder part.
You got me there.
You're probably wasting your time with me.
Hello? Sheriff's Department, hello?
We're sorry.
Man, we're not having any.
I was going to say, so far, we're a big zero.
I didn't get to talk to Gary. Never did talk to Gary.
Dang. Do you remember Gary Corporon, Charlene's son?
No, I don't. That is just so long ago.
Have y'all seen him? Because we're trying to find them. And if you see...
Yes, ma'am.
I swear you fat so. I hadn't been that long since the dog got you.
Dog got him?
Yeah, dog shot me.
Your own dog got
He
you that
got
bad?
my pistol and shot me.
No wonder you don't tell that story, fool. Today's been kind of frustrating because I got to visit with a lot of people, but we didn't learn a whole lot to add to the case.
We desperately need to find some more witnesses if we're going to solve this murder, and I know one person that I can count on with information is the town barber. If anything happens in Matagorda County, I guarantee you he knows about it.
He owns a barber shop and a liquor store combination.
Only in small towns can you do that, huh?
Let's see if he's in here. Daddy.
Hi, how you doing? All right.
So this is your barber shop I've heard about.
Not much.
When I was 12 years old, I wrote this sign for him. And his haircuts were $4. Now it's $9. That's me. That's me.
She used to sweep up and clean in here and all the
Oh,
time.
I sure did. I always clean.
Probably ain't been clean since she left.
Probably hasn't.
Kelly was something else. Her mother was after her all the time to go outside and play with the kids. She stayed in the house and read books. I didn't realize how smart she was until she was valedictorian. She had her mind set on this lawyer business.
Charlene, was she like a partying lady? You knew her.
They would go to the National Hall, her and her boyfriend, and we sat at the table with them a few times.
When you said her boyfriend, you mean Ben Fry?
Yeah, I knew him.
What's he like?
I thought he was a nice guy.
How did he treat her?
I thought they got along good.
Really?
Yeah.
And what about Gary Corporon, the son? Did you ever know him?
He'd always drive by in a pickup in front out here, and he'd have some feed in the back. And he had about 3 of them chow dogs, and that was some bad dogs. And I didn't like him. Gary beat up on Charlene 2, 3, or 4, or 5 times, and cracked her ribs and broke her collarbone, and I don't know what all these different times he done stuff to her.
It's getting easier to see why people thought that Gary Corporon is the one who murdered Charlene. even though the DA never did anything to go forward with the case. What's really important is that we learned more about those child dogs, evidence we'd never heard about before. It's not mentioned in the police report. If Ben Fry murdered Charlene, he would have had to have gotten past those dogs. So what we're going to have to try and figure out is whether or not those dogs would have just ignored Ben and let him onto the property. See you later, Daddy.
All right, we off to work?
Yeah.
Hi, Miss Dorn.
Come on in.
Kelly sent Richard and I to go talk to Frances Dornack. She was Charlene's best friend at the time of murder, and we're hoping that she can give us more information on our two suspects. You and Charlene were good friends?
Very good friends.
For how long?
Several years.
How often would you see her?
Every day.
Were you aware of any problems in that home?
Yes.
What kind?
Between her and her son, Gary. Just to give you an example, she told me that one night he took her and tied her in a chair. And then he took a gun and he held it to her head and told her there's only one bullet. He kept snapping it. Well, it was empty, but I mean, that's the way he treated her.
Actually tied her to a chair and put a gun to her head.
That's right.
Did you ever see him do anything physically abusive toward her?
No, just what she told me.
Did she ever disclose she was scared of Gary?
No. She said she was scared of her boyfriend before she got killed.
You talking about Mr. Fry, Ben Fry? Is that the boyfriend you...
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought possibly that he killed her. She told me that he was getting weird, and I said, you better leave him alone. And the next thing I knew, she was dead. She was going to quit going with him, and I don't think he could handle it. About a week after she was buried, he called me. When I heard his voice, I just went, hair stood up on my head, you know, because I really thought that he had killed her.
Talking to Frances, we actually expected to get some evidence that Gary Corporon killed his mother. But she was very suspicious of Ben Fry. It wasn't what we expected. I think we need to take a closer look at Ben for sure.
This is the courthouse. This is the DA has his office here. That's always where I thought I would end up being, the district attorney of Matagorda County. That was my dream.
It's kind of weird to be in my hometown of Matagorda County, Texas, investigating the 31-year-old murder of Charlene Corporon, a member of a family who I've known all my life. We still have two possible suspects, Ben Fry, Charlene's boyfriend, or Gary Corporon, her son.
If you don't mind, I'd like you to come on back here and...
Can I bring this?
Sure, bring your coffee. You bet. Come on back.
Daniel Zumalt, a man who lived and worked at the farm, flew all the way here from Kansas, and I'm hoping he has some information about the case.
You worked for Gary and Charlene in 1981.
Right.
How many times would you say you saw them get into a verbal argument?
Every day.
An argument can be, leave me alone, Mama, I'm tired. Is that the kind of argument you're talking about? Okay, use the words.
His favorite words were, I'll just blow your head off and just take the money and go.
Right in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, he would actually get in his mother's face.
Show me what you mean.
Oh, there was one time she was sitting down and he walked up and he goes, just like this.
Okay. What about his chow dogs? Could a stranger go up to Charlene's house?
I don't know how they would get past the dogs. Okay. His dog was better than any burglar alarm.
Back then, she dated a guy named Ben Fry. How did they act if this Ben Fry came up to Charlene's house?
Oh, they'd bark and raise hell.
Okay.
You know, if our killer were Ben Fry and those dogs would have barked at him, Gary, Doris, his wife, or Charlene, somebody should have heard those dogs barking.
Mr. Zuma, earlier on, you talked about the arguments that they had. What would be the reason Gary and Charlene would get into their ugliest fights? What were the fights over?
Money. She was mad at him because he was pissing it away faster than it was coming in. One day he'd have a roll of money to choke a mule. Then he'd be flat-ass broke.
What do you think he'd have done if she finally said, you're done, I'm taking you off all the checking accounts, no more money?
He'd have killed her. No, there's no question in my mind. I know he would have.
If money truly is the motive for Gary Corporon killing his mom, then I want to prove that. And the life insurance policy, the $100,000, is the key to that.
This is Johnny Bonds. We're about 5 minutes out. All right. Bye-bye.
So, Johnny Bonds and the guys were going to talk to the banker who has the most information about all their financial dealings.
We're going to show him the records that were subpoenaed 30 years ago in 1982 and see if he can explain what they mean. I'm Johnny Bonds. Yeah, nice meeting you, sir. You remember this life insurance policy? The way it looks is like that's an account.
We may have been holding that for
collateral.
That's what I'm wondering.
Everybody's thinking that the son, Gary, collected that $100,000, but
it doesn't state that. I don't remember.
I appreciate it. No problem. The banker wasn't sure, but he thinks that the $100,000 life insurance policy was used as collateral on the loan on the farm, which was heavily in debt and losing money. If that's the case, then that $100,000 would not have gone to Gary. Here's something we need to consider. There's a possibility that Gary didn't even know that $100,000 policy existed.
The life insurance.
Yes.
If Gary Corporon didn't collect the life insurance policy, then we just lost one of his primary possible motivations for wanting his mother dead.
I'm still thinking Ben Fry's a good suspect. I think we need to do a lot more work on Ben Fry. Mr. Fry.
Yes, sir.
I'm Johnny Bond.
Ben Fry is in the middle of all of this, so it's time for Johnny Bonds and the guys to go meet Ben Fry, to look him in the eye, and to ask him all those questions that have never been asked before.
I got to ask you something. I'm going to be real honest with you. I've read the statement you made back in 1982, and I suspect you just about as much as Gary.
Charlene had told the girlfriends that he had a temper.
Yes, Charlene had wanted to break up with him.
Charlene owed Ben around $27,000.
I try to defend my own self, but I've been living with that.
In my opinion, you had a motive because she owed you money, and from what I've read, she was trying to break off the relationship with you. Is that true?
I hauled grass from her mother and daddy's place over there and planted it. I spent a lot of money into it.
Yeah, I remember reading reports, something like $27,000.
Yeah, and she was slipping off with another fella from Bay City driving a white Cadillac. They went dancing a time or two. I caught them at the dance, but I went on about my business.
The morning this happened, you started calling her at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, sir. I called and I called and I called before he answered the phone, and he was acting kind of funny when he answered the phone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did he tell you?
He told me his mother was dead, come here quick. And they were having big problems. She kept giving him money, and he wanted more money and more money. She was afraid of her own son. Another time, he had spanked her real hard and heavy before I got there on a Saturday evening.
You mean like over his knee and spanked
you? Yes.
With his open hand?
Yes, that's what she said.
Yeah. Huh.
The other time, they had a fist fight, and she fought and he fought, you know, and she had not a black eye, but a bruised eye.
Uh-huh. Did you ever hear Gary say that he was going to do anything to her?
He always said that one day he was going to kill her.
He said that to you? How many times did he say that?
Man, I don't know how many times, but he did say that. He said, "Oh, I'd kill you." I was afraid all along we was both going to get killed, and I was fixing to cut things off completely, but I was just gradually working my way out. She was a sweet lady. Every day I think about it.
Do you remember Gary having a chow dog?
Yes,
Charlene?
sir. Gary had chow dogs. Was a bad booty. He'd run loose most of the time.
Yes, sir. If you drove up over there, would he bark at you?
Yes, sir.
Would you get out? Would you jump out of the truck? Or
No, I had to wait a while.
Ben Fry comes across as a very honest and open person. He answers every question without hesitation. If he's the killer, we don't have a whole lot on him.
While Johnny is out talking to Ben Fry, I want to be thinking about the murder weapon. We're never going to be able to find the murder weapon in this case. So the next best thing is to put in the hands of Gary Corporon 22. So today we're going to go to Palacios, Texas to talk to a boy I grew up with and also his father to see if they know anything about a .22 caliber weapon that Gary supposedly carried around with him.
Me, my sister, my dad, Gary, and his wife went on a fishing trip. And we went offshore, and the boat died. And so we had to call the Coast Guard or somebody to come pull us in. We just took the rod and reels and threw them over the side. We started catching a lot of little sharks. And we always carried a .22 rifle on the boat to take care of things like that. Well, I turned to go get the gun, and I heard Gary say, "You don't need to." And about that time, I heard like 4 shots. Bam, 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 bam. And I asked Gary, I said, "What do you got?" And he handed it to me. .22 pistol. It was about... It fit right about in my hand.
Right in your hand like
right
this?
about in my hand. I handed it back to him, and he said, "Yeah, I always carry that in my pocket because you don't never know when you're going to need it."
And you said that y'all were having motor trouble. Well, Coast Guard had to come.
They were young Coast Guardmen, and so he wrote out the deal, and I took it, and I signed it, that we had been boarded.
Okay, so the Coast Guard paperwork and the day you're talking about is all the same?
Same day. Same day.
They can say definitively Gary Corporon used the .22 pistol, but the best part of it is that the paperwork from the Coast Guard puts that weapon in Gary Corporon's hands 1 week before the murder. Well, thank y'all very much. It's huge.
The evidence is stacking up against Gary Corporon, but before we can focus on him, we need to come to an agreement and discuss what we all feel about Ben Fry.
Okay, so is there any reason we need to be still considering Ben Fry as a suspect?
Trying to put myself in Ben Fry's shoes. Had come over there with the intent of killing her, and she owed me $27,000, and he knew that she had all this jewelry, and I would have taken some of that jewelry to get my money back with. But that wasn't the case.
I don't think he could approach that house with chow dogs barking or raising cane.
Especially after hearing already from a couple of people that those dogs were mean and would alert them if anybody stepped on that property.
How did they act if this Ben Fry came up to Charlene's house?
Oh, they bark and raise hell.
I've talked to hundreds of killers, and there's no doubt in my mind he is not a killer. I promise you, he had nothing to do with it. He's going to be a great witness.
That's awesome.
Ben Fry's been a suspect in a lot of people's minds for 31 years.
Anybody disagree? Nubbin, Richard, Yo?
And now it's time to clear his name, mark him off the board, and let the world know he had nothing to do with Charlene's murder.
We used to have 2 suspects, and now we're down to 1. We're left with Gary Corporon. It's time to talk to the man who's at the center of all this, Gary Corporon. There's a windmill up there. Maybe it's up here on the left.
It's definitely out in the boonies.
It's time now for us to finally get down to talking to Gary Corporon and Doris, his wife, about what happened that day. So the plan is for Nubbin and me to try and talk to Doris while Johnny Bonds and Richard Ruth try and get a hold of Gary Corporon. So that's his house in somebody's home.
Got a car coming out, Kelly.
It looks like the wife. Doris was in the car. You think she saw us?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to follow her?
Yeah.
He was in the car.
Doris!
Nubbin and I go follow her to try and catch her.
Okay, y'all need to get close to the house because he might be leaving soon.
We're speeding, trying to catch up with her. We don't want to lose her. That's our only lead. God damn it.
You got to be kidding.
We've lost Doris, and we don't know where she's going.
Everybody drives a pickup truck.
Hopefully Gary's in the house when we get him to go with us.
Is that her right there? I bet that's her. That's the truck right there.
That's the truck?
Yep.
Sure enough, we see the truck pulling into the nursing home where we think Doris Corporon works.
Talk to me.
We're down the street from the nursing home. We're pretty sure that we saw Doris Corporon walk inside.
Don't approach her until you know we're at the house.
We're waiting on y'all. Don't worry.
All right.
Oh, my God, Kelly, I've been waiting for this day.
It's only been 31 years.
I know, child.
Let's just go right up and knock on the door.
Okay. Hello?
Hello?
Anybody here? Hey, anybody here?
Are you Gary?
Johnny and Richard are trying to locate our main suspect in this case, Gary Corporon.
Are you Gary? Oh, okay. My name's Johnny Bond, son.
Wes.
How old are you?
28.
Okay. We're working on your grandmother's murder case, and we want to talk to your dad about it. Is Gary here?
No, he's in Africa right now.
Africa?
In Oilfield.
Okay.
Yeah, he flew to Angola 2 weeks ago.
He's in Africa working on an offshore oil rig, so I guess we're not going to be talking to Gary today.
Hey, Johnny. What's going on?
He's in Africa.
What?
Been gone for 2 months.
Gary Corporon is a redneck country boy in Angola, Africa. Never thought that would happen.
We're not going to talk to him.
For right now, Doris is right there.
Yeah.
All right, let's roll.
Doris, Johnny Bonds.
Hi.
Nice meeting you, man.
Nice to meet you.
This could be a good thing, because if Gary's not here, Gary can't manipulate what everybody else does and how they answer the questions. We're here because we want to talk to you about what happened back in 1982 to Charlene. What did Gary tell you he found when he went inside the house that day?
He went inside and he found her dead.
How was he acting?
From what I can remember, he was very flushed. He was white. He was very upset.
Did it scare you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't know who it might have been, if it was somebody that were just passing through the woods or
How could somebody come past y'all's dogs, do you think?
I don't know.
Did you ever ask Gary if he had anything to do with it?
No, I didn't, because things were good with them.
You never thought that Gary abused and hurt Charlene?
I know that they had had lots of problems in the past.
Did you know about her being admitted to the hospital one time for being beaten up?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. There was a $100,000 life insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the beneficiary on that life insurance?
Gary was the beneficiary.
So he got that money.
Exactly.
Really?
It's been a long time, and we gave all of our statements way back then.
Doris, I think you figured it out.
No, I haven't figured anything out.
I think yeah.
No, I haven't.
You might not want to believe it, but you know he did it.
No, I don't know he did it either. I'll state my life. Gary did not do it.
You could see that it was affecting her. She was breathing real quickly. She's tapping her foot. Now that Doris Corporon knows we're here and knows that we've reopened the case, there's no way she's not going to pick up the phone and tell her husband everything that she knows.
The good thing is that even though she's doing her best to still stick by Gary, she said a couple of things in there that helped.
I agree. I mean, for one thing, we nailed down the dogs again.
And the life insurance?
Yes.
I mean, we got motive locked in for sure now.
Doris tells us that all $100,000 of the life insurance policy went to Gary Corporon. It's huge because Gary Corporon can never get up there and say, I didn't benefit from my mother's death. I didn't care about the money. It wasn't important to me. Yes, it was. He got everything.
Okay.
The next step is for us to draw up the probable cause so that we can present it to the district attorney so he can decide whether or not he believes there's sufficient evidence to charge Gary Corporon with the murder of his mother. The case against Gary Corporon is a strong case. He has all the motive in the world.
His favorite words were, I'll just blow your head off and just take the money and go.
Then we have the whole financial situation and $100,000 life insurance policy.
Who was the beneficiary on that life insurance?
Gary was the beneficiary.
Mr. Sardelli's statement put a .22 weapon in Gary Corporon's hand 1 week before the murder.
He handed it to me. .22 pistol that was about, it fit right about in my hand.
Right in your hand like
right
this?
about in my hand.
You piece it together little by little, and we're there in this case against Gary Corporon. This is good. Let's give it to the DA. It's all done. We sent it to Stephen Reese, the DA. What we want to hope for here is for Stephen to tell Richard, I'll take it to a grand jury.
This actually went to the grand jury before, right?
Yeah, they took no action, and then it goes to the side and people forget about it. And I think that the whole point of the last week or so is that we've gone back and talked to a lot of those same people, plus all of our new people, and found all these other new things that add to the story. Matagorda County has a different DA than there was back then. His name is Stephen Reese, and he wants to review everything contained in the court's file and in the old file. So that's the good news for today, that he's very thorough. The bad news is we're not going to get an answer today as to what his thoughts are about the case. So I guess we just have to wait and be patient and keep our fingers crossed. Hello. Okay, well, help me think it through. The DA just called me, and he says that there's something that he's discovered that's going to have a huge impact on the case. So you know something about all this that we don't even know? Whoa. He wants to talk to me about it in person. I don't know what this means. I'm worried. It might mean that this case is going to stay cold forever. I'm on the way.
Kelly's been in a meeting with the Matagorda DA's office for hours. We're all sitting on pins and needles wondering what is going on.
Hey guys.
Hey, friends.
We just came from DA Stephen Reese's office, and he typed up a statement that will answer our question because it's different than you anticipated. Based on my review of court documents, I believe Gary Wayne Corporon was indicted on September 20th, 1982 for the murder of Charlene Corporon.
So if a grand jury indicted Gary because they had enough probable cause to take him to trial for Charlene's murder, what happened to the trial?
I have requested additional investigation into the improprieties which appear to have caused a 31-year delay in prosecuting this case to conclusion. Signed, Stephen Reese, District Attorney.
All right, let me see if I got this straight. Gary Corporon got indicted for murdering his mother, Charlene Corporon, 31 years ago. The case was never dismissed, but it's never gone to trial. It's just disappeared.
Correct.
How does that
That's a first for me. I've never heard of
I
anything.
haven't either. When the current DA reviewed the sealed grand jury documents that no one can have access to except for the DA, he found out this new information that none of us could have ever anticipated or known about. In fact, the old grand jury in 1982 indicted Gary Corporon for murder. What we want to happen happened in 1982. He was indicted.
Well, why wasn't he tried?
That's why there's an investigation.
That doesn't surprise me.
What would have happened if we hadn't reopened this?
Nobody would have ever known. You know, it makes me sick to my stomach to think that something like this could happen even in the county where I grew up. But the DA did give us some other information today. Stephen Reese, the district attorney, told us that he is planning to take this case into a new grand jury, asking them to indict Gary Corporon for the murder of Charlene from 1982.
Now I love what's happening.
The current DA is going to take all of the information from the old case, along with all of the fantastic new information that we uncovered this week, and go to a new grand jury and ask them for a superseding indictment for Gary Corporon to be indicted for the murder of Charlene Corporon. Come on, baby, high five.
I can't tell you the feeling after 31 years. I can't believe it.
You're right.
It's over. I was right.
Awesome, awesome.
I hope my wife hears that. I was right.
It's been a wonderful experience in my hometown. After 31 years, we get to clear the name of Ben Fry, and the best part is now we get to go tell the Corporon family that we've gotten answers, and now they can get justice.
I guess y'all had a pretty busy week.
First, let me tell you where Gary is. He's in Angola, Africa.
Really?
And he left 2 weeks ago. Today, we go talk to the DA, Stephen Reese. It's his opinion that Gary Corporon was indicted for murder on September 20th, 1982.
How can you be indicted and not go to trial?
That's why there's a new investigation into the improprieties of the paperwork and the possibility of criminal charges being filed.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Stephen Reese is going to take all the old stuff from 82, all the stuff we learned this week that made the case stronger, made the case good, and present it to a grand jury and ask them to indict Gary for murdering Charlene. So it's all good news.
You know, you hate to think that, God, my family member did that. But now to know that our suspicions weren't unfounded.
Crazy.
They weren't crazy.
Now
They
you
weren't,
know.
yeah.
But as a family, I want to thank y'all very, very much for y'all's hard work and for bringing this up.
When you first approached us, I told Victor, I said, if there's anybody that can do this, it's going to be Kelly.
It's her.
I said, knowing Kelly, you know, there's only one person I know that hates to lose more than me, and it's Kelly.
All right, give me a hug. I'm glad you're good.
I'm glad you're good.
Thanks, you guys.
It's very bittersweet to talk to the Corporons and tell them what we found out. You know, he's their family member. It makes them sad, I'm sure, to hear that. But mostly, they just wanted answers. And we're able to do that. We're able to give them the answers to all their questions.
Are we going to order some turkey fries, child?
We got to do that.
What you going to get, Nevin?
Filet mignon.
A filet mignon.
Lisa, we need an appetizer turkey fries, too.
You got it. Victor and Barbara are
They're very happy.
They said, thank y'all very much for all the hard work. I don't really know how you describe an experience like this, getting to come home to work on this case with my family and friends, and everybody's cooperating, and it turns out the right way. Somebody's name gets cleared, and we solve a murder case that everyone here has wondered about for such a long, long time.
Your sister's picture is up there. And where's yours?
They didn't pick me.
What is the Rice Queen?
Rice Festival Queen candidate.
Oh, really?
Did you cheer your sister on?
Yeah. There's no way that bitch should have been a beauty pageant, but I cheered her on. Here's to our people.
Your people is right.